Hello guys, Harun here. Welcome to Fundamentals of Magento 2 Development from Scratch. Is part 12 of our series and part 2 of our mini series which is Object Manager. The topic of our today's discussion will be dependency injection. Dependency injection is a very important and fundamental topic in Magento 2. So let's begin. Guys, in our today's agenda, first of all, we will review our previous lecture. In our previous lecture, we discussed the concept of local objects and their limitations, and we will also illuminate these limitations with singletons or singleton objects. After that, we will discuss in after that we will discuss dependency injection and why we need dependency injection in this regard. Uh, to better understanding, we will case study a typical web application's workflow and analyze its limitations and will discuss how dependency injection illuminate these limitations. In this regards, there are some concepts which are hard-coded dependencies. We will discuss what are hard-coded dependencies, why they are bad, and why we should avoid them. After that, there is a principle of try, don't repeat yourself. We will discuss what is try and how we can implement this concept via dependency injection. After that, there is another principle which is single responsibility principle. We will look at single responsibility principle. After that, we will thoroughly introduce dependency injection, and last but not the least, we will also discuss what is object preferences. Although it is a topic of our next tutorial, today we only introduce this concept. So let's see what is next. In our previous video, we try to we not we created our PHP objects via new keyword. After that, we analyze these objects and identify these three problems. Let's take an example so we can better understand this. So as you can see that in my editor, there is a module which we created in our last video. I make some changes in this module to provide you better understanding about singletons and these concepts. First change I make, I create a object manager class here. So I don't want to take object manager from this location and use it. I also create a local a class here in which I implement this I sorry inject this interface, and via this method I can get this method. It provide reusability and lines of codes. So let's see in my entry point, which is our controller. As you can see, I inject this class here which I created here, and get object manager, and via get object manager method I save this property in my local property, which is object manager. So I will use object manager in my execute method. Let's look at the execute method. Where is my main code? In execute method, you can see I instantiate a microprocessor object via get method. We already discussed that with get method we can create singleton in Magento 2. So let's take a look at microprocessor class. There is nothing special in our microprocessor class. The class has only one property, which is speed, and method which is displayed when we create new instance. When we create new instance, as you know, the construct method is called, and we can see this message on screen. Uh, to print this message in constructor is to make sure that instance is created. We will use this message. We will use this message to make sure that how many times instance of this microprocessor class created. After that, I assign the speed property with 500. I make an assignment to assign the property of speed with 500. After that, you can see I introduce an other dependency which is motherboard. Let's take a look at motherboard class. There is also nothing special in motherboard class. There is no implementation regarding motherboard. Actually, we don't need any implementation of motherboard. We only want to discuss the concept of singletons. So I think we just need this code. So again, with this, I extend this class with my object manager class to get to my object manager. Then I call this method get object manager and save object manager in this property. Then I create a singleton with object manager's get method and print this message that speed of microprocessor from, actually it's not from, it's from motherboard, and display this speed parameter. So here we will analyze what speed we get. You can see I did not assign any speed here. I just get speed and print here. Here we will see either the method magento to return me any speed or not, or if the return what is its value. If it returns same value as here, it means that I am getting singleton here. So in get motherboard class, this method will invoke and print this message. I think there is enough discussion. Let's try to look this behavior in our browser. I fire up my Google Chrome, and let's type this URL which is here. So here my point is proved. I got singleton. Let's try to study this output uh, step by step. Here you can see that when execution flow is when my execution flow started, it's come in that execute method in controller and execute this line of code. On execution this line of code, my execution process come here and print out this message. It's mean that the object or instance of this class instantiated once time, and the message is print here. It's mean that the instance of this class is created. After that, something very interesting happened. I assigned this value is 500 and instantiate the method of motherboard class. Inside motherboard class, I also called its message get motherboard. In motherboard, you can see that I again get this instance and print out its value. Here you can see that there is no message again, just the message I got from my motherboard. So here you can see also the value 500. I did not set any value here, but got value of my previous object, the value from this one object. It's mean that I got singletons, and get method return me singletons. This way I magento to solve very crucial problems. In some cases we need singletons, like our cache class, session class needs singletons, because we need object which can only be instantiated only once, and we can use it in all places in my in our code. So it's a very important concept to understand singletons. So let's see what is next. So via singletons, we actually solved our first problem. We changed our local object with our shared or global objects. We can get its properties in different classes. As you can see, I assessed properties in two different classes, which are computer class and my model, which is motherboard. So here is the proper definition of a singleton pattern. Singleton pattern, you can say that, is responsible to create an object and making sure that only one object gets created. Actually, this class provides a mechanism to assess its only one already created objects, which you can be assessed directly without need to instantiate the object of this class. We do not instantiate the object of this class again, although we assess already created object. So here is a figure. First, we create microprocessor class with our traditional method, and it is a local object. We change this local object with our shared object via object manager's get method. So we got singleton here, but we discussed in our previous lectures that using object manager is not a good approach. Object manager is actually reserved for only our system level developers. What we should always use, we should always use dependency injection here. So let's change our implementation from object manager to dependency injection and see whether it's any change in whether it's any change our workflow, or what is the behavior of our code, whether it work or not. So let's start. I am good going just copy this code here and inject in our constructor. Press enter to make it clear, as more readable. uh, Provide here whole path of my controller, sorry, my class or my model, and here declare a variable microprocessor. And also do one more thing, uh, save this thing in property. Processor is equal to uh, microprocessor, and let's create this property here. Private $sign microprocessor, and we did not use this. Actually, what I am doing, try to invoke that dependent. Here I am using object which I injected here. I got object here. To use this object in my this method, I have to save this object in a property. So I saved this object in a property here and called here. Let's save it, and let's try to delete my already created generation files to see the effects or to avoid any conflicts, if any, here, because I am using developer mode. Let's refresh our page, and you can see there is nothing change. Refresh again, there is nothing change. I got same output here. Here you can also change this object manager implementation with this dependency injection. So now we saw that we can share data and logic because we are using singletons here, and we resolve our problem one. So now let's jump towards dependency injection and why we use dependency injection. Here is our typical flow or example of our a traditional PHP web application. So here are some requirements. I have to get data from user via HTTP, which I receive via HTTP request. Then I have to validate data via a validator class or object. Then I have to make a database connection, save data in database, and return response in form of JSON. So here is a very simple our computer class and its create method. In this create method, at first line I introduce dependency HTTP request, which is a hard coded dependency. Now what is a hard coded dependency? Here HTTP request is a hard coded dependency because I cannot change this dependency in my flow of code. I always got this hard coded dependency. I cannot change it with any process. So here is an hard coded dependency. I get computer data from post method, and here is another hard coded dependency which is a database connection. It provide me connection to my database. Either it is a MySQL or Postgres. Here is also a hard code because in the definition of this class there will be only uh, mechanism to connect only one database. Either it is a relational database like MySQL, Postgres, or it is a non-relational database. After that, there is also a dependency of computer validator. This class is responsible to validate my data. In validators check method, I check either the data which I received from a user is correct or not. If it is correct, I insert this data in my computer underscore data table in database and return a success response via JSON response or JSON response. Sorry. And here is the else part of our if data is not correct or there is any ambiguity in our data, we return error which notify or generated by our validator class. Here are some flaws. First of all, we did not follow here single responsibility principle. According to single responsibility principle, our class or methods only focus on this code. It should not create objects, and rather than it's only focus on our business logic. So we did not we don't follow here. We uh, did not follow here single dependence, a single responsibility principle. We are also creating objects here. Secondly, there is no reusability in this code. For example, after some times there is a scenario we have to receive data from a Excel or CSV file or from another database. So in this case we are restless. Here we have hard coded dependency which always can receive data from user. So we cannot reuse this method or this class anymore. So one more scenario can be a scenario in which we have to write data in a PDF file or in Excel file, and this class have a hard coded dependency on database connection. It's only can save data in a database, which is an other flaw which avoid reusability. We cannot do reusability here. Also, there is one more problem is difficult to mock up. When requirements change, the mockup is also change and become difficult. We have to change a mockup for our test unit environment again and again, and it's a pain in head. Also, is code this code is hard to maintain. Uh, After some time there can be more requirements which are more hard to tackle here because there are all hard coded dependencies. There is very tight coupling here. For example, in some case we have to remove this dependency HTTP request here, then whole code will break and did not work. So at more time it the code hard to maintain. One more scenario can be there is dependency in our computer validator class. Here we receive dependency, so this code will break. So it is not a good approach. Suppose that our requirement has changed, we have to get data from .csv file validated by a uh, uh, validator and create PDF file instead of database. Save this data into PDF file and display response to user on screen rather than return it in JSON form. So these problems are not less than a nightmare. Here are all hard-coded dependencies, which means tightly coupled dependencies. So we cannot reuse them. One approach we can do that create multiple copies of create method. The names like that create cre- create data to get data from excel file, or multiple copies of this create method, which is against our try principle. Don't reuse sorry don't repeat yourself. So and other approach is that always replace dependencies or implementation. So if any change here, remove this hard-coded dependencies and introduce another hard-coded dependencies. It can be more problematic if after some time we have to move previous approach. For example, first requirement change from HTTP to Excel, and then after some time the requirement is back to HTTP. So it also pain in head to change implementation and dependencies again and again. Also the principle of single responsibility principle is also violated here. We are creating object here, we should not create objects here. And also due to change in requirements again and again, unit tests and mockups for automated frameworks are also difficult, difficult about impossible, because when our automated environments comes here and did not find any any uh, dependency, it will break and did not work. So what is the solution of this problem? The solution is dependency injection. Here are same requirements, but you can see that there is no hard coded dependency. We are actually injecting our dependencies in our constructor. Here are our dependencies. First of one is input, second one is connection, third one is validator, and fourth one is response. Uh, we are we are saving these dependencies in our properties, so we can use these dependencies in our create method. And in create method you can see that we are getting computer data regardless of its source. The data can come from user, can come from excel file, can come from another database. Regardless of that, we make this implementation. And after that there is a validator and connection, which is providing a container. Here container can be a PDF file or a relational database, non-relational database. We did not care about that. After that there is a response can be JSON response, XML response, or a formatted text, which we are going to represent on monitor screen. So here we are saving data. The saving data method is capable enough to save data in PDF file or in database. So here you can see that our code is loosely coupled. Here you can see type hints and their objects. Uh, if our requirement change from user input to get input from and file, we only have to change here dependency. So Magento 2 is very rich, and Magento 2 provide a very powerful and rich mechanism for that, which we see in our next slide. Here, type hinting mechanism will work in Magento 2's case and to fully facilitate us and will fully facilitate us. We in any case requirement change, we just have to change our control dependency here, and we don't need to change anything, any code, any single line of code here. Our program will not break and will work fine. So in most of cases, there can be some exceptional cases. So here you can see that all four our dependencies are now loosely coupled, so they are easy to maintain, and making mockup is also easy. Here also we are following single responsibility principle. We are not creating any objects here. We just receiving and using them. So let's see. Here are benefits of dependency injection. Here is one question that in example types hints are look like they are hard coded, like input is hard coded, which is not true actually. Magento to use dependency injection mechanism use object manager behind the scene. uh, so developer have a great power to control our instantiation of dependencies. We can control our dependencies via di.xml file, which is located in our modules etc directory, and in our di.xml file we can manage our dependencies. Uh, this mechanism is known as object preferences. Means we can set preferences for our objects, which objects need to be instantiated in which case. So via dependency injection we can set mechanism here which objects we have to inject here. So we will study this concept in great in more detail in our coming video. So we saw that all hard-coded dependencies are replaced by loosely coupled dependencies, so we gain reusability. Uh, Also, dependencies are loosely coupled, so in a developer hand, to inject a JSON response object or XML objects according to requirement. It's not a big deal. So there is also we are also following here a single responsibility principle. We are only using these objects. Here, one thing to mention that type hints are very important. We will discuss this in our coming videos. That's all for today. We will see a practical example in our coming video. How we actually it will be very interesting to set object preferences. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Please give your feedback. Have a great day.